Welcome back to Finnish Made Easier. Today we're going to be talking about the partitive case. I'm going to split this up into two videos. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to form partitive so that you'll be able to make your own words into partitive and you can recognize it. And then in my next video, I'm going to be talking about how to use partitive because I think that's kind of a big subject, kind of needs its own video. So I'm going to split it up that way. But partitive is really useful, used all the time in Finnish, so really important to understand. So let's get right into how to form it. I've got, just like usual, kind of all these word endings here. We're going to go kind of through each ending and talk about if a word has this ending, what is its partitive form like. So to start out, this one is probably the most common. It covers a lot. So if it ends in a single A, O, U, or any of the high versions of those, I don't know why I put a dot above the Y, it should just be an old Y, but A, O, U, or any of the high versions of those, A, U. And then we'll also use this rule if it ends in an IA or an EA. So to be clear, all of these are just if it's a singular one of those at the end of the word, and then we're also going to include IA and EA. If it ends in any of these, all we're going to do is add A. So pretty easy. We just take any of these words and we add A. So for example, if we have pollo, we see that pollo ends in an O. So we can just, to put it in partitive, say palloa. Palloa. And it's really important for recognizing partitive. This A is a very recognizable aspect. All of these are going to end in A. Some of them will be a TA as well. So usually when you're looking at a partitive word, it will at least end in A, and a lot of them end in even a TA. So that's kind of useful for trying to recognize what's partitive and what's not, is the A is kind of the thing that signifies partitive. So, yep, pollo goes to polloa. Most of these are just the single vowels. But we also include IA and EA, so a word like vaikea, which is difficult. We again just still add the A. So we get vaikea. Nice. So polloa and vaikea. Again, this one includes a lot of words in Finnish, so very easy one and good one to know. The next one is if it ends in an E. If it ends in an E, what we're going to do is add TTA, all right, onto it. So just like how E was different when talking about noun stems, E is also separate from the rest of the vowels when it comes to partitive. Most of the time, you don't just add an A on the end. You're going to add a TTA. So I'll write that up here. Add TTA. So for example, with the word perhe, which is family, we're going to get perhette. And I'm using this high A because of vowel harmony, and I've got a video on vowel harmony if you don't know what that is. So I'm going to use a high A here, but perhe, we're going to go perhette. A double T and an A. And so that one is if it ends in an E. For the next one, we're going to do if it ends in a vowel. So when I have V, I'm meaning vowel. If we end in two vowels besides the ones we already talked about. So I put it later on the list. If you run into IA or EA, you'll follow this rule. If it's any other vowel, it's usually going to follow this rule. This one is, we're just going to add a TA. Add TA. So again, you can kind of notice the pattern I was saying. They all almost end in TA or A. So we got this TA, TTA, or just a single A. So they're all kind of different, but very, very similar. With tue, we see that this is a vowel. This means work. We can just add TA right onto the end there. Tuete. And that's it in partitive. So that's most of our vowels. I'm going to talk about I at the end because I is a little bit weirder, but we can move on to nouns and adjectives that end in consonants. There's only three different separations for those. First, we have NEN, also very common, especially in adjectives, but also with some nouns. So NEN, what we're going to do, this one's a little bit interesting. The easiest way I can think of it is if we drop the NEN and add STA. So kind of a weird one. Again, we're going to end with this TA. But we're just going to take off the NEN at the end and add STA. So for example, if we have the word ihminen, which is a person, if we just take off that NEN and add STA, we get ihmista. Ihmista. So again, I just swapped the NEN for STA, and that's going to be in partitive. Ihminen, ihmista. For these ones that end in vowel S, sometimes these ones aren't always going to do this one. Sometimes they'll follow this next one. The ones that follow this rule are the same exact nouns that follow my vowel S words when I talked about noun stems. So this will be most vowel S words. If you know that its stem is a TE, it's going to follow the same rule. And what we're going to do with this one is we're going to take off the S and add TTA. So drop S, add TTA. So again, kind of similar to E, except for we're taking off the S first. So for an example, salaisuus, which is like a secret, we see it ends in this vowel S. So we can just take off the S and add TTA, giving us salaisuutta. Salaisuutta. And that's it in singular partitive. For all the rest of the consonants in Finnish words, it's pretty easy. All we have to do is just add TA onto the end. Add TA. So if it ends in an N, then you can just add a TA right after the N. So it's just going to be like an NTA at the end. For example, this one, kysymys, it doesn't follow either of these two, and it just ends in a single consonant. The C stands for consonant. It can be any consonant. I can just add TA right onto the end there. So with kysymys, which is question, I can get kysymystä. So you see, here's our word, kysymys, and I just added the TA right onto the end, kysymystä. That should work with basically every other word that doesn't fall into one of these two that ends in a consonant. So that's kind of nice. We don't have like all these weird subcategories, kind of like with noun stems. Most of the time we can just add a TA if it doesn't follow one of those rules. So that is almost all of our words right there. Just palloa, vaikea, perhettä, työtä, and so on. Pretty easy. I'll go over some more examples of these verb types, of these noun types later. We'll go through some practice and try putting them into each one. So if I was a little fast, then don't worry, we'll do some more practice. But now I want to move on to ones that end in I, because just like with the noun stems, I's are a little bit weird. So first of all, our easy one is if it ends in SI specifically. With SI, we can just drop the SI and add TTA again. So this one's very similar to vowel S. We're just going to drop the SI and then add TTA. So a very common one, vesi, water, goes to vettä. Vesi, vettä. And if it's not SI, then I kind of split it up into three subcategories. So for all the rest of these, we don't have to worry about the stem at all. We can just look at what the word ends in and find this. If it ends in I and not SI, the first thing we're going to do, I think this is the easiest way to think about it and make it make sense, is first thing you do is find the stem. You might remember that I's sometimes have a stem that's just the same, and sometimes it changes to an E. And what we do for partitive is going to depend on that stem. So if it ends in an I, so I guess right here I put these subcategories A, B, and C instead of the numbers. These are going to be the stem of this word. So for example, if I have a word that ends in I, that stem is also just an I, like the word tuoli, which is like a chair. The stem of tuoli is just tuoli, so it still ends in I. If that's the case, everything's good. We can just add A, kind of just like those ones up there. So tuoli goes to tuolia. So pretty easy if it just stays as I. If it changes to E, then we're going to have kind of two more categories. I'll do this one first. If it ends in, actually I'll do this one first. If it ends in an L-E, R-E, N-E, or H-E, then most of the time we're going to drop E and add T-A. So that one's a little bit weird, but I'll give you an example of how this works. We have the word pieni. Its stem is piene. And so we see that this fits into B here, where it's got this N-E as the stem. So even though the word ends in I, its stem has N-E at the end. So I can take off the E and add T-A, giving me pienta. And pieni means small. So if I want to put the word small in partitive, it's going to be pienta. Similarly, if we have the word kieli, which is language, its stem is kiele, and we see that the stem doesn't end in I, and it does end in an L-E, and so we can take off the E and add T-A again to get kieltä. So you gotta watch out for those. It's usually ones that end in L-E, R-E, N-E, or H-E in the stem. These H-E's are very, very rare, but like, for example, lohi, which is salmon, is an H-E. Most of the time, you're just gonna have L-E, R-E, and N-E. Gotta watch out for those. They will usually get rid of E and add T-A, but if it's E stem that does not end in L-E, R-E, or N-E, then what we can do is, again, just add A, but it's to the stem. So, for example, the word suomi, its stem is suome, and we see that the stem is not ending in I, the stem isn't any of these, but it is still ending in E, even if it's not any of those. So like with Suomi, which is obviously Finland, I can say Suomea. Sorry, I kind of ran out of room there. I'll write it below. Suomea. So we add that A onto the stem. So that's why finding the stem is really important, because if the stem ends in E, it's always going to be a little bit different than if the stem ends in I. Suomea is very useful because this also means Finnish, so you're talking about speaking Finnish, you'll usually use Suomea if you've heard that before. So that's how we find it from Suomi to Suomea. So these I's are a little bit difficult, but obviously this is the kind of rule where if you're trying to speak really quickly on the street, you're probably not going to be able to think through this whole chart, but this is just to be able to kind of check yourself, understand why things, understand that there is actually some consistency in these rules, but the best thing you can do is just practice, practice, practice. And luckily partitive is super common, so it starts to stick pretty quickly for most people. But yep, most of the rules are very consistent, very good. So I want to change the board and we can do a little bit more practice with these, get a little bit more used to them, and then everything should be good and you'll be ready to watch my next video on how to use partitive and when to use it. So I'll switch up the board real quick and we can get into that. All right, I've switched up the board. I've got a bunch of examples over here. I didn't really have room to make the rules shorter somewhere, so either maybe take a picture of the rules earlier or write them down. I'm going to be referencing them a little bit, but I'm going to go through each of these words and show how to put them into partitive, so you can kind of test yourself too. If you want, you can pause the video and just try to go through them all on your own, or you can watch me go through them and I'll kind of show you how to put each one in partitive based off of the rules that we talked about earlier. Right before I do that though, I want to mention also two very common exceptions with partitive that don't follow any of these rules that are used all the time are the words lumi and lapsi. So lumi is snow, and for some reason when it gets put into partitive, it's lunta. So this M changes to an N. I don't really know why that happens, but very common word to see in partitive. So I know that lumi goes to lunta, and for some reason lapsi goes to lasta. So those are both good to know. Lapsi is like a child, so lapsi goes to lasta, lumi goes to lunta. And one other thing I wanted to mention was when we have words that aren't Finnish, so like we have like a name like John or Fazer, which is the chocolate company in Finland, Even though it ends in a consonant that doesn't follow any of the rules, you're not just going to add TA if it's clearly not a Finnish word. Just like how the stem of the word, we added I to add anything onto it. You're just going to act like it has that I already, and the I is not going to change, so you can just add an A after the I. So like if I want to put the name John into partitive, I'm going to have Johnia. Just to add an I-A at the end, or like fatser would be fatseria. So if it's like not really a Finnish word, it's some sort of name or maybe a company, then oftentimes you'll just add an I-A at the end to make it into partitive. But let's get back to the Finnish words and the normal ones that we've talked about. So to start off, we have sana, which means word. This one ends in an A. So since it just ends in an A, it's our first rule, very easy. We can just add another A onto there. So we can say sana with a double A, sana. Nice. The next one, käärme, which is snake. This one ends in E, which means it's our rule when it ends in E, we add TTA. So if I want to put käärme into partitive, I'm going to add TTA, which is going to give us käärmettä. So this one was like perhe that we talked about before, käärmettä. Next one, punainen, which means red. It's an N-E-N. So with N-E-N, if you remember, we're going to take off the N-E-N and add S-T-A, which will give us punaista. So again, right here, I just took off the N-E-N, added S-T-A. If you need to go back and check what the rules were again, you can look back in the video and check back what these rules were. This is just kind of for practice once you're a little bit more comfortable with the rules. So yeah, we get rid of the N-E-N, add S-T-A, punainen, punaista. Laukku, which is like a bag. Laukku ends in a U. So again, it's going to be the same rule as with sana, where it's just ending in that single vowel U. So we're just going to add an A. So pretty easy. Laukkua. It's a good time to mention too, you notice that we haven't used softening or kopete at all in this video. Partitive does not use any softening or kopete, so that's very nice. It's just going to stay the exact same and follow the rule that we talked about. We have puu, which is tree. This one is vowel vowel, so it's going to fall into our vowel vowel rule, which is that we add TA because it wasn't EA or IA. Those are the two that fall under the same rule as sana. Since it's just another vowel vowel, we're just going to add TA. So this is tree, or it could be wood too. So we're going to get puuta, puuta, and then Sudan, which is heart. It looks a little bit different than a lot of the other ones we talked about. This one is ends in a consonant, and since it's not a vowel vowel S and it's not N-E-N, we know all we have to do is add TA. So with Sudan, we can just do Sydäntä. Rewrite that there. Sydäntä. So again, we just keep the word the same and add TA, Sydäntä. Next one, allergia. It's spring right now, this one means allergies. This one is vowel vowel, but it's IA. If you remember, IA and EA are special, where we also just add just a single A. So allergia, we're going to add another A onto there and get allergia with two A's at the end. Allergia. Next one, yhteys, is like connection. This one is vowel vowel S, so even though it ends in a consonant, we can't just add TA because it follows one of those two rules. Vowel vowel S, and if you remember, the rule for that one was you get rid of the S and add TTA. So you get yhteys. that's all of those. Hopefully those all kind of made sense. If they didn't, I would go back and kind of watch the part where I talked about all these individual rules again. These were just kind of for practice, so you can even maybe try them on your own again after I've solved them. Try words similar. And hopefully these will start to make sense. Those are most of the rules that are good. These last ones are sort of the I's. So let's first find the stem of them, and then we'll go to what partitive is. I'll give you guys the stems for now because this video is not really about stems, so I'll just give you the stems. So for ovi, we have ove, tunti, we have just tunti, and for veri, we have vere. So now if you want to try these on your own, you can feel free to pause it and try them now that you have the stem. If not, I'm going to go through them. So ovi, which means door, we see that its stem is ove. And ve was not any of those letter combinations. We had li, ri, re, ne, le, or he. We see ve is not on there, so we can just add an a right onto the stem. So we can get ovea, so that's partitive on the word door. Tunti, this one's always easy. Once the stem is the same, it just ends in I, we can just, again, add an A, so pretty easy. Tuntia, tunti is hour. And then veri, which is blood, its stem is vere, and you might notice that re was one of those letter combinations. So we had le, ne, and re. So what we do with veri, or vere is the stem, we can get rid of the e and then add ta. So get rid of that e, and I can add that a there. So that's all of them. If you have any questions about any of these, you can leave them in the comments or go watch those parts of the video again. And I'll have a document that talks about these in the video description. So if you want to look at that, that can be really helpful too. I'll have a section with examples about all these normal types of words, and I'll have a section specifically about words that end in I. So that might be helpful. If you're still kind of confused, having questions, go to the description and there'll be a nice document with lots of examples and explanations. So hope that makes sense. Again, in the next video, I'll be talking about when to use partitive, which is really big. So hope to see you in that video. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Heippa!